Hi guys, welcome to History. Last time we were talking about Julius Caesar, and we're going to talk a little bit more about him today. So after Julius Caesar came back from after being kidnapped by the pirates, and he came back, he wanted to be a leader of Rome. Now, Rome had two consuls. They had gotten rid of the king because they didn't like having one person in power, because the king became kind of like a dictator and he would just do whatever he wanted and he didn't have anyone to answer to. So Rome decided the better thing to do was to have two men in charge, and they called them the consuls. And that way those two men could kind of keep track of each other, and kind of they'd have to compromise and keep each other on track and that type of thing, and it was working well for them. Well, Julius Caesar wanted to be one of those consuls, but there were already two men there, so he couldn't be part of it. So they said, well, you can be in charge of our Roman citizens that live in Spain. And Julius Caesar said, but I want to be in Rome. And they said, well, if you want to be in charge of something, you have to go to Spain, where a lot of our Roman citizens have moved to, and they kind of have a city there, and you can help keep track of them. So Julius Caesar said, fine, okay, I'll go. And he brought he had kind of people who came with him, his helpers, and they were traveling to Spain, and they happened to go traveling up through the Alps, a group of mountains. And when they were in the Alps, they came across this little town, and in the little town, the houses were kind of shabby. Their goats were just walking around, their animals just kind of walked around in their houses and on the streets, and the kids were playing, and their clothes were all dirty and torn, and their feet were bare. And the Romans were used to living in a very civilized place, right? It was very civilized, and they always wore very nice clothes, and their streets were clean and well taken care of, and their animals were kind of contained. And so Julius Caesar's friend said, oh, can you believe this place? It's awful. I would never want to live in a place like this. And Julius Caesar said, well, I would much rather be the most important man here in this village than to be second in command in Rome. Pretty much saying that he wanted to be in charge. Julius Caesar really wanted to be in charge and be a leader. Well, he went into Spain, and he did lead the Romans there. In fact, he helped them quite a lot. There were bandits or thieves who were coming in and stealing from the Roman citizens there, and he stopped that, and he made sure the Roman citizens had what they need, and they were well taken care of. And well, he had a nice place that he was staying. He had a nice home that he stayed in Spain, and he had a whole library of books. And he would read the books every day. He would read. He loved to learn more about everything. He just loved to learn and loved to be constantly reading. And so one of the books that he was reading was about, let me look on my book right here. It was Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was great. He's called Alexander the Great for a reason. And I think we've talked about him in the past, where he was in charge of countries, like lots of countries. By the time he was in his 20s, he was fearless. He would go out and he would conquer everyone. He was conquering everyone, and he was in charge of everyone, and he was this young man. And the one great thing everybody talks about Alexander the Great is he had a horse, this amazing horse called Bucephalus, that everyone thought this horse could not be trained, but Alexander the Great trained him. So Alexander the Great was this amazing guy, and kind of a hero, right? Like a superhero almost to all the people who had come after him. And Julius Caesar, he was reading his book, like always, reading about Alexander the Great, and then all of a sudden he dropped his book, and he was just staring out the window. And he was staring at the window and staring at the window, and then he just started crying. And he was crying and crying. And his friends, who were also sitting around reading books with him, said, Julius, what's wrong? What's wrong with you? Why'd you stop reading? Why are you crying? Is your book sad? And Julius Caesar said, no, I am sad for myself. I am so sad. I'm reading about this man, Alexander the Great, and he's so much better than me. He was younger than me, and he had already conquered all these lands, and he was in charge of more land than, than the Romans have. He was this amazing man, and I'm not even close to as great as him. I should be. What's wrong with me that I'm not that great yet? I should be amazing. I should be better than Alexander the Great. So I am crying for myself because I have not done a good enough job. I have not worked hard enough. I have not been fearless enough. I have not pushed hard enough to be as great as Alexander. And his friends are like, Julius, what are you talking about? You're in charge. You are in charge. You're a leader. You're the leader of the Roman citizens here. And he said, nope, not enough. That's not good enough. That's not great enough. And he said, I'm going to ask if I can come back to Rome. So after a while, he was granted to come back to Rome. And he and his friends traveled back there. And when he got there, he convinced the people of Rome that he needed to be a consul also. Now, they already had their 2 consuls, but he convinced them that there should be 3. And I think it's called a triumvirate. A triumvirate. I might be saying that wrong, but they tri means 3, right? A tricycle has 3, and right, when triplets are born, there's 3. So tri means 3, and so he convinced them that they needed to have a group of 3 men, not 2, be in charge, and that he needed to be the 3rd man. And so Julius Caesar became the 3rd consul of Rome and helped rule Rome. And he was happy about that. He was happy being one of the main leaders of one of the greatest places in society at the time. And he was happy, but I bet he was pushing to do even more because Julius Caesar wanted to be great. Today we're kind of talking about how he wanted to rule over towns and villages and countries and those type of things. And so I thought it would be fun to make like a little village. So I'm sending home with you some lunch bags, and on the front of the lunch bags we'll say each lunch bag will represent like a building, and so you can cut out the doors and the windows and the things and whatever from your paper that's attached and make a little village, and then you can be in charge of it like Julius Caesar wanted to be. Okay? All right, have fun making your village, and remember that you are great and you can always keep working harder to be greater. So have a great day. Bye, guys.